As usual, this is just uh, a conversation or a talk in which, like you, I'm trying to uncover what I think about it. I do have an intuition of what I think about it, but I'm just trying to flesh it out in words. What do I think about this? And in this particular instance, we want to talk about, or we want to tackle the issue, not the issue, but the concept about men being providers. Now, I think in many ways it would be fair to not just look at men, but to also try and understand roles in general. Now, the biggest problem with roles, and in this context, gender roles, is the fact that it is. Now, I do have this belief. I do have this belief because I think we have this idea in our head that our foundations are built on solid truths and solid logic. And I think that's very false. I think our foundations, the foundations of our thoughts, our ideas, our institutions, our morality are built on intuitions. That's why I think anytime you try and dissect any idea to back, which means you ask why continuously, or you just try and deconstruct any idea to find what's the basis of the idea, you actually get into I think I did see this once in a video where it's like human beings rely on presuppositions. So presuppositions are things that we presuppose to be true for other things to be true. So for example, it's like if you're trying to build a building, you set the foundation, and the foundation is what allows the other parts of the building to exist strongly. Now, the idea we have in our own thinking is that we think that our foundations are built upon truths and logic the same way the surface is. And by the surface, I mean that which is built upon the foundation, which we try and enact logic. For example, if I say something, let's look at morality. For example, if I say killing is bad, everybody says that's logical. That's a logical thing to say, and that's a logical thing to believe. Killing is bad. But if you think about it, if you really think about it, killing is bad. Why is killing bad in itself? And well, if you think about this, let's just try and dissect that for a bit. Why is killing bad in itself? So you kill somebody and we say it's bad, but why is it bad? Like why is it a bad thing? And people say, well, it's because it's bad. People might say something like, oh, because you're taking someone's life. But then again, the question is, why is that bad? It's like, why is it a bad thing? It's like there's something we refer to as bad, and killing seems to fall under the category. And I think the question is like, why is it categorized as bad? Well, it's because you're taking someone's life and you're taking someone's rights to live. People might start saying things like that. But in truth, if you actually go back to it, killing is bad insofar as we feel emotionally that the situation of killing is bad because we act and we have morality and laws and social biases that tilt towards the direction of killing is bad. Because in truth, killing is just an act. The same way charity is an act, but one is good and the other is bad because they elicit certain behaviors, they elicit certain emotions which drive the foundations of many of our institutions or cultural perceptions of life. I don't know who said this, but I think, a butterfly is no different from a rat, but the butterfly is seen in a positive light because the butterfly elicits certain emotions that is favorable to the butterfly. Does the butterfly seen in good light? But the rats doesn't do so. Rat cockroaches, they are not seen in a positive light, not because they are bad in themselves, but because they elicit emotions that negative. So that just is many. I mean, that's just one of the ways. You could do this for any other thing, and you ask, well, if the idea is that this is good or this is bad or this is how things are. The idea of those things are founded upon, I believe, some feeling or institution, and we express those feelings or institutions. We presuppose them as true. Thus, I mean, the idea of presuppositionalism actually is a deep topic, and not trying to go into all of that today, but I'm just trying to refer to it as a means to understand where I'm trying to go to. So the idea is, certain everything that we believe to be true originates, I believe, from a presupposition. Anything. I mean, the fact that I look at this this scented candle and the body of it is black, and I say, well, that is black. The body of the scented candle is black. Well, first of all, why is that the body? Why is that an it? And why is it black? Well, you presuppose, like, we have to presuppose that it is black. Like, why is it black? Why do I even use the word black to refer to my perception of it? Why do I believe now my mapping is an actual truth of, like, maybe we could look at it as a mapping. Maybe we see it as a mapping. Like, well, this shade of color or this shade of lack of color is what I would deem to be black. And thus, if I ever see something, if I ever get to an argument about what color something is, I would suggest it's black. And we presuppose that thing to be black. If there was no human existing, then it wouldn't be black. It will just be. It wouldn't be the body of a scented candle. It will just be. But human perception, we need to understand, perceives things within its own filters, which is to say, another perceivable entity would have its own perceivable filters, which would be different. Thus, it may not see it in the same light in which we do see it. And if that is the case, then it would have a different mapping of reality in its own, if it has the language, but in its own language. So presupposition is how we build our solid foundation, because there isn't really any other thing. You can't, I mean, maybe we can, but we don't do that. We don't believe things to be true on the basis of truth, on the basis of logic. Logic isn't the foundation. I think logic is how we make sense of what happens in the surface, where I think things are presupposed as true before we are logically make sense of it. And I think those type of things are the very foundations of things like religion. Or, I mean, everything, like cheating is wrong, or cheating in a relationship is wrong. Well, wrong. Why is it wrong? It's like cheating is wrong. Wrongness exists. Cheating exists. And the question is, like, why is cheating in that category? Why is it not right to cheat? Like, why is it wrong and not right? And it's like, and people like to say, well, because you hurt the other person. Well, then why is that wrong? Why is it wrong to hurt the other person? Or because you make the other person you hurt feel bad, but why is that wrong again? It's like, why is it wrong to make someone feel bad and subsequently hurt them? And it's like, well, why is it wrong? Well, it's wrong because the person feels bad. And I think they get to that point where you're like, where you have to repeat the same thing. Well, the person feels bad. I think you get into this if you're like me and you're in an argument online and you think the way I'm thinking and you tell someone, well, it's not really wrong. And they say something like, well, if you don't get it, then I think you are just the problem. Or I think because it gets to a point where I would say we cannot handle, because I think language as we have come to use it, is kind of built like we've built it to engage just primarily in how we um how we deal with the surface. So I think language, we idolize our realities. I really think we do this. We idolize our realities. We idolize what things mean, and we idolize those things ignorant of the presuppositions, because I think those presuppositions, because of how they enact themselves as interrelations, I think we easily lose. I think maybe the fact that it, or when it becomes presupposed, we aren't consciously aware of it. Maybe it's more of an unconscious or subconscious processing of those um of this presupposition. Thus, I don't think it's in our language. For example, like I've been in many situations where I would be in an argument about whether or not something like that is true. I mean, whether or not something is moral or not, or something is right in terms of moral or ethical ways, just saying something or acting. And people would just say things like, well, how can't you just see that it's right? How can't you just know? So if you can't see it, then you're the problem. Because I think they've gotten to that point where, you know, I've taken them to that point where, you know, the logic fails, and not necessarily the logic fails, but the logic kind of contradicts the logic, in the sense like the laws of logic contradicts the truth of that particular logic they hold in themselves in as true. And because of that, and at that point, they might not see that, they might feel like they've reached a kind of impasse, and it becomes difficult to, understandably so, it becomes difficult to come to terms with that. And they might just say, they might just revert to some logical, I'm looking for the right word, some logical cushion, I would say. Like, oh, well, then you're just a bad person, or you just don't want to get it, or you're just part of the problem. Because it's like a logical cushion before the part, the thought of before the place of existent contradiction. So before the place of existent contradiction, which is scary, and it makes you question yourself. So there's like a cushion where you have this line or word or sentence you tell yourself, or you tell the other person, to make you feel good about the the insufficiency of your truth or your logic, and your language insufficiency as well, to deal with the insufficiency, or to try and bypass the insufficiency. That is just a mess. Anyhow, but that is the point. The point is that most of the foundations of many things we agree to be true are dependent on presuppositions, and that's just about it. So now we've gone to many tangents. But let's fall back. So now, the reason why I decided to talk about presuppositions is because I believe roles are kind of dependent on this, and in this case, gender roles. So, like, what do I mean? So, um, if everything relies on a presupposition, then you know, then the um the presupposition sets the foundation. Thus, if gender roles is part of everything, then gender roles rely on the presupposition. And and that is basically what I was getting to, I think. Like, like everything else, but I think if we look at gender role in isolation, we see, oh, the argument usually sets itself almost as if, like, the cushion, I don't think it's a cushion, but the logic is that men are providers, women are nurturers, and that is the logic. And usually people say it with such an authority that it almost feels true in itself. In fact, when people say that, I sometimes find it hard to, like, it kind of puts me at the pause, because I'm also like, maybe I'm also like, I find it difficult to not get my way out of those presuppositions. I don't believe it to be true, but it's still hard. So, for example, men are providers is like, well, what about men makes them providers? Like, what about men makes them providers? Well, because men are powerful, men are strong. And, people give different reasons why they believe men are providers. They could, sometimes it's religious reasons, sometimes it's cultural. I mean, but I think the only way you could defeat any sort of presupposition, I mean, presupposition in itself is not wrong if that thing that thing which you presuppose is actually true. For example, if religion is true and you presuppose the truth of religion, then it's not as though you're wrong in many ways. It's like, because what you're presupposing to be true is actually true, but the problem is, I don't think any of that is true. And the presuppositions we have are reliant on things being true when we cannot infer this. We can't defend that those things are true in a non-egocentric manner, like in a non-human egocentric manner. Those things are true insofar as human beings exist to suggest that they are true. Because if they weren't true, then, like, the entire concept, even of language itself, that something is true, that something exists, that something is, that something can is, and something can is be true. It's, the entire thing is like flawed in itself. But, what were we talking about? Yeah, so people like fall back to these narratives, to this logic that men are providers. Well, the question of women are not charged. So those women are providers, men are supposed to spend the money, and men are supposed to. So my question is, are men providers? Well, no, men are not providers. And what? Well, okay, it's like this. I have this theory of like everything and nothing, in which I believe contradictions exist. But contradictions don't exist in themselves. They exist because of the lack of anything. And what I mean by that is that I think things don't exist, but things also do not exist. So because nothing exists, you can say something exists, but you can't also say something doesn't. You can say something that doesn't exist, but you can't also say that something does not exist. You can say either of those things. So, and I think that I think because of the existence of this true nothing, I think we can have something. Depends on how you want that something to go. What I mean by that is, we could presuppose anything because nothing exists to suggest something. I think that makes sense enough, but let me try and simplify it. I think if nothing exists, but in that nothing existing, you're gonna have a vast array of sets of non-negations that negate themselves in a contradictory manner, but somehow true. Then just those negations could eventually actually be positives with the right presuppositions, because those negations, those contradictions exist as negations of which nothing is suggesting any form of truth. Nothing is asserting the truth. Like, for example, if I say God is real, then in if nothing is true, then God is not real, but God is also not real. So those things can be presupposed to be true, regardless of whether or not. I mean, in those two things can be presupposed to be true in our reality. Like you could say and believe any of those things are true, and you would believe them because, at least through our perception, those things in truth don't exist and don't not exist. It's it's interesting. So if you ask me if men are providers, I believe men are not providers. I also believe men are not providers. And that's not to say men being not providers makes them providers. No, I'm saying that those two things are true. Men are not providers, but men are also not providers because nothing is true. But then again, you can assert from any of those ideas the truth, the one you pick. You could assert that men are not providers, which means men are providers, as true because there's nothing to contradict or to stop you because nothing is true. Because nothing as being true allows for something to be true, regardless of what that something is. It just relies on your perception, and to the extent which your perception is willing to delusionally accept that thing. Everyone, I believe everyone is delusioned. I don't believe I am beyond delusions. I just believe maybe we might suggest that there's a spectrum of delusion, but I believe. But then again, who decides the spectrum? I don't believe there's a spectrum of delusion. Why is this one person more deluded than I am? If the person sees perception in this way and I see perception the way everybody sees perception, that doesn't make me less deluded, I think. I just align more with people, and because I align more with people, it's just a natural law that people would say I'm not deluded because I align with them. Not a natural law, but a human law. So it doesn't mean I'm more deluded or less deluded than someone else who we isolate as deluded, or someone who I just think like someone as schizophrenia, then we might say, oh, the president is really crazy. They're deluded. They see things that are not there. But I don't know, like, we see things that are not there. I like, we do see things that are not there. I see a pink towel on my wardrobe. It's like, I am believing that what I'm looking at is a pink towel and is a wardrobe, which those things are not there in themselves. It's a form of nihilism, but still it's true. That's not a pink towel. That's that thing. Like, I always, even though it's possible, I try and see myself, get outside myself, even though it's not possible. Like, without existence, what is a towel? What is a pink towel? Like, think about in the absence of existence of any perceivable, of any entity that perceives. What the hell is a pink towel? If you removed all entities that perceive, then you wouldn't have a pink towel. You just have something that is. That's why I'm saying we presuppose these things, to a non-perceivable entity. A man killing another man is nothing. Like, it's non-perceivable, thus it's not a thing. And that's why I say things are nothing and not something exists and not something exists, which is my logic of something and nothing. Usually I think where perception comes in, because perception can, whatever. But yeah, men are not providers, but men are also not providers. Not to say, so neither of those things are true. I mean, both of those things are true, rather. Both of those things are true. So, I mean, but does this really do anything? No, okay. Does this change anything? Like, am I suggesting anything? What I mean when I say not providers and not providers. It's like, well, it's the same thing for women. Women are not providers. Women are also not providers, which means if there was a reality where perception was tilted in a manner where we perceived women to be providers, there would be nothing to stop that perception from being a reality. Because there's nothing to assert the opposite as true. Not those two things are true does. Yeah, but they're true, not in a forceful way, not as positive, but just true as negative. Thus, you're going to have the truth being a force. What I'm saying is, both of those things, men being providers and women being providers, could be true in separate realities. They could be a reality further down the line, further down the timeline, or in history, where women are providers or women are seen as the sole providers of home. It doesn't matter the reason. It's just it'll be built upon intuition. So the reasons are quite negligible. So the reasons don't matter because, like, you're like, well, what's the reason? Really, it's not really a reason. It's more like an intuition, like feeling, or an emotion that presupposes something to be true. Then you just accept the truth by creating logic on the surface of it, and then you believe it to be true. And I think that's where men is. My point is that men are not, for any innate reasons, provided. And the idea that anyone has a certain biological or spiritual or cultural role relies on presuppositions. And those presuppositions are not true in themselves. It is true insofar as we intuit or we feel them to be true. And that is about it.